Despite its eventual historic significance, there was a moment when this band's iconic lead singer actually contemplated scrapping one of the greatest albums ever recorded, because he had second thoughts about the quality of the record. The story of what led to the creation of U2's astonishing achievement, the Joshua Tree, next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Tell you what, if you long for the days of MTV when they actually played music, you are going to love this community. Subscribe below right now so you never miss an episode of our daily features, and make sure to check us out on Patreon to be a part of curating this history and for more videos. You know, since their debut album, Boy, in 1980, U2 steadily ascended through the ranks as one of music's most acclaimed and vital band. Often categorized in the new wave and post-punk genres, by 1987, U2 had transcended classification. It was during this time that the four members of U2, Bono, The Edge, Larry Mullen Jr., Adam Clayton, felt removed from what was going on in the music business. The breadth of their music, evolving over 4 consecutive multi-platinum LPs, positioned the band for far-reaching significance, while their burgeoning fan base anxiously awaited the release of their 5th studio album with the working title, The Two Americas. Now, The Two Americas originated from what U2 manager Paul McGuinness called the band's great romance with the United States, as the group had toured the country for up to 5 months per year throughout the first half of the 1980s. U2 frontman Bono revealed that he started to see two Americas, the mythic America and the real America. The Edge was more interested in the European atmospherics of The Unforgettable Fire, and was initially a little reluctant to follow Bono's lead to seek a more American sound. The Edge was eventually convinced otherwise after discovering blues and country artists like Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson, Hank Williams, Lefty Frizzell, and many others on American public radio stations during the Unforgettable Fire tour. The foursome was ultimately smitten by the country's geography. All of the unique differences of the American terrain, the deserts of the West, the rainforests of the Northwest, the Dust Bowl, and the ocean climate on the coast appear as lyrical motifs throughout the recording. Leading up to the album's recording sessions, Bono read the works of American writers like Norman Mailer, Flannery O'Connor, and Raymond Carver to understand, in the words of Hot Press editor Niall Stokes, to quote him, those on the fringes of the promised land cut off from the American dream, end quote. Thematically, The Two Americas juxtaposed antipathy towards the United States against the band's deep fascination with the country, the open spaces, the freedom, and the nation's ideals. Throughout the sessions, U2 sought a cinematic quality for the record, one that would evoke a sense of location, in particular, the vast open land covering much of the United States. U2 represented this concept in the sleeve photography, depicting the band in American desert landscapes. There were 3 notable events during the recording sessions that helped shape the conscious tone of the album. Now, the first was the band's participation as one of the headliners of the Conspiracy of Hope benefit concerts for Amnesty International. The second was the devastating death of roadie Greg Carroll, and the third was Bono's subsequent eye-opening sojourn in Central America. On the evening after the first day's shooting for the album art, photographer Anton Corbin told the band about the mystical spiritualism of Joshua trees. The striking twisted plants found in the deserts of southwestern America, and suggested that they use a Joshua tree as an image for the album sleeve. Now, according to Mormon church legend, early settlers named the plant after Joshua, a prophet from the Bible, the Old Testament. Apparently, the tree's unique branch structure reminded the settlers of the prophet Joshua raising his hands in prayer. Bono was wildly infatuated with Joshua trees when he learned that they had religious significance. Of course, a big Christian. The following day, Bono declared that the title of U2's new album should be changed from The Two Americas to The Joshua Tree. Later that morning, while driving on Route 190 near Darwin, California, The band spotted a lone standing Joshua Tree in the desert, and it was exactly the kind of shot Corbin envisioned for the album. They stopped the bus. They were traveling in at Zabriskie Point in Death Valley National Park and photographed the lone tree for about 20 minutes. It was an act that the Edge called fairly spontaneous. That famous tree used on the back cover of U2's epic record actually died in the year 2000, but the inspired music found on the Joshua Tree will live forever as one of the greatest collections of songs ever recorded. Let's deconstruct some of the choice selections from this monumental album, beginning with the first track on the record as we go into this. I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I wear every single day. If you need a new pair of glasses, Zenni is your place. Go design your own right now and make sure to put blue blocks on them. It helps you protect your eyes from the blue light that we see every day. It's been a game changer for me. Go to Zenni.com and do it. Let's get into this amazing album. Where the Streets Have No Name. It was the third single released from Joshua Tree in 1987. Bono wrote the lyrics about the class structure of Belfast, a city where you can predict a person's religion, political affiliation, or income status by the street that they live on. The song was extremely challenging to produce, however. The arrangement was literally scribbled on a blackboard at the recording studio. Acclaimed producers Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno teamed up to produce Joshua Tree, and both lamented about the complexity of producing Where the Streets Have No Name. There are 11 tracks on the Joshua Tree, but it's been estimated that producing Where the Streets Have No Name took nearly 40% of the time that it took to record the entire album. It was so bad that at one point, Brian Eno became so frustrated that he instructed a production assistant to erase the tape and scrap the song entirely. Lanois recounted that the assistants fortunately didn't oblige Eno, and the team persevered, finishing what has become truly one of U2's finest compositions. Now, the treatment for the music video for Where the Streets Have No Name, of course, a tip of the hat to the Beatles rooftop concert, with U2 putting on an impromptu concert on the roof of the Republic liquor store located at 7th and Main Street in Los Angeles. It was lighthearted plagiarism since nearly every artist has borrowed something from the Beatles. Regardless, though, it was an amazing piece, and the video won the Grammy Award for Best Performance Music Video. I believe that was in 1989. Where the Streets Have No Name peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, but it hit the top of the charts in several countries, including U2's native Ireland. The first time that I heard Where the Streets Have No Name, it was a baptism by the fire of rock and roll. I mean, Where the Streets Have No Name, like Bob O'Reilly, it's the sound of freedom. You know, freedom of expression, freedom of the arts, the freedom to be anything you want to be. I've always said that Where the Streets Have No Name is not just a song, it's a religious experience. Now, the second cut on the Joshua Tree, still haven't found what I'm looking for. U2 is credited with composing all of the Joshua Tree's music, but the aura of the album draws from American and Irish roots music more than the group's previous albums, following the counsel and influence of Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, and Keith Richards. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Has strong gospel influences, with Bono singing about spiritual doubt in an upper register, and co-producers Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois joining the Edge to provide choir-like backing vocals. Lanois also played the percussive guitar part in the intro of the song. The DNA of one of U2's most enduring anthems can be found in a demo from an early jam session, alternately titled The Weather Girls or Under the Weather. It was, according to Adam Clayton, a bit of a one-note groove, while the Edge dismissed it as a little like Eye of the Tiger played by a reggae band. Love that. The song's only saving grace was Larry Mullen's unusual drum part. With the instrumental backing nearly complete, though, Bono entered the live studio to experiment with a vocal melody through largely improvised lyrics, apparently. For The Edge, his bandmate's performance evoked a phrase he had conjured up that morning, loosely inspired by the lyrics to Bob Dylan's Idiot Wind. You'll find out when you reach the top, you're on the bottom. The Edge wrote the phrase on a piece of paper, and then he handed it to Bono while he was rehearsing. And when Bono included the line in the track, The Edge said it feels like that it fit like a glove. Still haven't found what I'm looking for was actually U2's second consecutive #1 hit off the Joshua Tree when it was released. Yes, I'm still running. With or without you. With or without you. Wow. The third track on the Joshua Tree. It was selected as the lead single from the album and the first of 2 songs that hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in America for U2. Bono delivers his finest, most versatile vocal performance in this song. It's about the conflicting lives of a famous musician and a married man. And it was another complex song that could have easily been relegated to a stack of forgotten demos. But a good producer can turn a diamond in the rough into a blazing sparkler, especially when you have not one but 2 superstar producers. Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno, incredible team there. The producing team expertly directed the process of shaping Bono's demo. Sure, you give it all, but I want more. Into the classic that With or Without You has become. An ambient sound was added by The Edge with the use of an infinite guitar. Clayton increased the volume of his bass, and Mullen incorporated an electronically enhanced drum kit, and the melodic structure of the song just came together from there. And then it was up to Bono to unleash that just incredible vocal that starts off with a beautiful lower register and then rises into a pleading higher octave. Bono's climactic vocal combined with the increased intensity of Mullen's percussion and The Edge's signature guitar riffs, just generates an explosive apex of sonic passion that very few bands have come close to. Political and social concerns were the subject of several tracks on the Joshua Tree, including the 4th cut on the LP, Bullet the Blue Sky. Bono wrote the lyrics for Bullet the Blue Sky after visiting El Salvador during the Salvadoran Civil War and witnessing how the conflict between rebels and the US-backed governments affected local civilians. Now, during the mid-song spoken passage, he speaks of a man with a face red like a rose on a thorn bush, which is actually a reference to Ronald Reagan. His face red like a rose on a thorn bush. Bono and his wife Allie traveled to Nicaragua and El Salvador, where they firsthand saw the distress of peasants bullied by political conflicts. The trip angered Bono and formed the basis of the song's lyrics. Bono recalled the ground shaking and remembering the stench of the war zone. Now, when crafting Bullet the Blue Sky, Bono asked The Edge to put El Salvador through an amplifier while listening to a song by British band The Fall. The Edge tried to emulate its guitar riff, but instead came up with his own part that was up-tempo, really hard-hitting. It eventually became the music for the chorus section of Bullet the Blue Sky. Track number 5 on the Joshua Tree is Running to Stand Still. Gotta do something about where we're going. Dark and disturbingly real narrative of a heroin-addicted couple living in a hopeless situation in rundown apartments inside Ballymun Flats in Dublin. With one of Bono's most beautiful vocal performances ever, dynamic and heartbreaking, which fits the equally affecting composition so well. Track 6 is Red Hill Mining Town. A demo of the song was put together early on during the writing sessions. It's about the National Union of Mine Workers' 1984 strike in Great Britain that came in response to the National Coal Board's campaign to close mines down. Track number 7, In God's Country. That was recorded in the basement of the Edges' house, which producer Daniel Lanois called a muggy little room where everything sounds dead and not a particularly inspiring place. Despite the location, he said the recording worked because of the spontaneity and lack of pressure, which contributed to a good take, a quality Lanois favors to overplanning, the recording setup. While producing the song, Lanois used a collection of channels in the mixing console designated as sound treatments to adjust the tone of the Edges guitar to give it a beautiful shimmer, which he thought contributed to the song's mood. Of course, it did. Lanois said, and I quote, "What was a fairly straightforward rock track became undermined by a mood of unrest," end of quote. That inspired Bono to change his lyrics to give them more dimension. Bono has stated that he originally didn't know whether the song was about Ireland or the United States, but eventually he dedicated it to the Statue of Liberty. In God's Country characterizes the U.S. as a desert rose and a siren whose dress is torn in ribbons and bows, a depiction both sad and seductive. The lyric speaks of a lack of political ideas in the West, which Bono later contrasted to the revolution in Nicaragua, along with Where the Streets Have No Name. The lyrics and sound of In God's Country reference the desert, in accordance with the band's wish for the Joshua Tree to have a panoramic sense of location. It's definitely one of U2's great album tracks. On the 3rd of July, the members of U2 suffered a piercing tragedy when Greg Carroll, their roadie and Bono's personal assistant, was killed in a motorcycle accident in Dublin, just 26 years of age. It overwhelmed the U2 organization, and the band traveled to his native New Zealand to attend his traditional Maori funeral. The experience inspired the lyrics to One Tree Hill, track number 9 on the Joshua Tree. "I'll see you again when the stars fall from the sky and the moon has turned red over One Tree Hill." One of the beautiful, moving passages that Bono wrote for One Tree Hill, the heartfelt tribute to U2's beloved fallen comrade. Now, the 11th and final track on the Joshua Tree is the scathingly political Mothers of the Disappeared. The song was written on a Spanish guitar, and the melody lifted from a piece Bono composed in Ethiopia in 1985 to help teach children basic forms of hygiene. Mothers of the Disappeared was another track inspired by Bono's experiences in Nicaragua and El Salvador in July '86, following U2's participation in the Conspiracy of Hope tour of benefit concerts for Amnesty International. Bono learned of the Madres de Plaza de Mayo, a group of women whose children had forcibly disappeared at the hands of the Argentine and Chilean dictatorships. On the night before the January 15th, 1987 deadline set by Island Records to complete the record, the band and the crew completed the mixing for the Joshua Tree. Scrambling to make the deadline, the band was having trouble sequencing the record, and make it the cohesive production that they had envisioned. The album's third producer, Steve Lillywhite's wife, singer Christy McCall, she volunteered to set the running order for the album. A lot of people don't know this. The band told her to put Where the Streets Have No Name first and Mothers of the Disappeared last, and with the rest, organized according to her preference. Bono, in particular, was extremely happy with McCall's sequencing, believing that she had arranged a good old-fashioned album with a beginning, middle, and an end. There was even more frantic last-minute scurrying, though. Around 2 a.m., just 7 hours before the album was to be given to the record label for final mastering, the Edge tried to convince Steve Lillywhite to allow him to add backing vocals to Where the Streets Have No Name, but he was denied. Lillywhite was confident that they had the definitive final version of the song for mastering. There was no need for additional backing vocals. I mean, as you can imagine, artists face tremendous pressure when dropping a new album. The members of U2, no exception. I'm sure that the band could feel it in their bones. You had to with the songs on this album. That this had the potential to be something really special. Although just prior to the release of the Joshua Tree, Bono was actually stricken with a sudden panic about the quality of the completed album. He said that he seriously contemplated calling the production plants to order a stop of the record's pressing, but he ultimately held off. The flop sweats that Bono experienced turned out to be nothing but needless worry. Man, is that an understatement. The Joshua Tree was released on time on March 9th, 1987. Became one of the world's best-selling albums of all time. Over 25 million copies sold. In addition to many other accolades, the album won Grammy Awards for Album of the Year and Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal in 1988. They bested the likes of Prince and Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. In 2014, the Joshua Tree was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Recording Registry, having been deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress. It seems like everybody has their own U2 experience, especially with this album. Mine is likely not too different from yours. I remember watching MTV incessantly in the late spring and summer of '87. It was actually the first time that I had MTV in our house. I grew up in a small town, like where cable television was few and far between. It was this summer where my parents were working a lot. My dad was building our house. MTV was on. It was actually playing music at that time. It was the best babysitter ever because I used to go to my friend's house, before that to catch MTV. But now I had it, and I was glued to this magical channel of wonder all summer long. With or Without You pretty much played on the hour, every hour, and I loved it. I went out and bought the Joshua Tree with my hard-earned allowance, and I listened to it nonstop for like 4 or 5 months. It was really the first time that I bought an album around the time that it was, rising. And I had it as a companion with all the music videos coming out, the singles, while the legend of the band was being formulated. I mean, I had that with Michael Jackson, Thriller a little bit, maybe Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, Prince, Purple Rain, but this was happening in real time for me. It was a really special experience. Summer of '87, the Joshua Tree was my constant companion, and it led me to the unforgettable Fire and War and Boy and everything else. I mean, these guys were going beyond the bubblegum pop and the puppy love. This was the first band that I discovered who really challenged me as a young listener. I started to dive a lot deeper into lyrics and the meaning of song and different songs than I'd done previously. U2 kicked open the door to my mind, which allowed other bands to walk through, like REM and the Replacements and the Smiths, and these messages weren't easy to decode in the songs. This was a thinking man's band. For me, at 10 years of age, this album was a minefield of philosophy and wonderment. It wasn't the type of music that I got tired of after a couple of days. I mean, it's been 35 years and I'm still enamored by it. The Joshua Tree, I mean, it has layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of intensity, fire, and doubtless passion. 3 chords and the truth indeed. I mean, anyone who has ever heard this album more than a few times knows exactly what I'm saying here. This album is so transformative. To put a final word on it, U2, The Joshua Tree was an album that brought color to the world around me. It was an album that I couldn't see through. It just was truth. And that's what rock and roll is all about. Leave us a comment about this amazing album, this band, and these songs. What do they mean to you? Share your Joshua Tree experience. I know you've got one. If you like this content, we do invite you to be a part of this community. Subscribe below to do that. To get this album, the deluxe edition that came out a couple of years ago, it's massive, it's amazing, but you gotta have it. Click on the links below. Check us out on Patreon for even more content to help us to create more videos, more interviews, the history of rock. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.